fighting for you to return to their barracks. Let's stop the fighting and begin the political and economic transition. So far, he's been not just...
So this woman is directly stonewalling. Look at that face. And the fact is, there had been repeated offers. If they had ever been willing to just without preconditions sit down, as Obama had promised in the election, this could all have been avoided, and she knows it. Why do you lie to us, Hillary? Skipping ahead.
The kind of equipment that Gaddafi is using against some people.
Very quickly, Madam Secretary, on the Sandhill issue, what is it justified
that can be asked? And I think there are certain factors that people look at. Take Libya, for example, again. There was an opposition that was organizing itself against him and was able to speak for the people of Libya. It was a very clear message that was being heard. The Arab League, for the very first time ever, said, given what Colonel Gaddafi said, that he was going to hunt down his own people, he was going to go house to house, he was going to shoot them like, I think rats, he said.
Now, how can she pursue this disinformation policy of harping on one line in a speech, knowing full well that there would not have been any massacre, and had there been, it had nothing to do with American conscience that they were worried about it. It had to do with American fear of loss of their side in a conflict.
And we knew that he had an incredible military capacity. So when the Arab League asked the United Nations to act, that was a very significant development, because you usually don't see regional forces. Now here in Africa, African countries have asked for assistance in Somalia. So when there are situations that develop where the region...
Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. In other news, Senator Jim Webb said no one wants to see Gaddafi stay, which is part of our narrative, describing the justification as basically by caricaturing opponent. There's no need to consider the position or views of Libyan loyalists. 3.2. Mission by Obama, unless the objectives are extremely bizarre, has been horribly bungled. Obama once again appears arrogant and aloof. Detached, going to Ireland to trace his ancestry, as on his father's side of the family is being bombed there in Africa. To play golf on Veterans Day as he's bombing Africa. Typically never done. Have anyone in his staff who knows this? Antagonizing Congress like this, unless it's a part of some far-fetched scheme, was completely unnecessary. And it also is hypocritical to not declare war. They're going to stay in the confines of this NATO UN mandate, which still would require congressional equivalent to a declaration of war. They bungled their image in the Arab world terribly, and they've made it impossible for any transition to come in other than a crushed Iraq. And this may be their intention. So this is what is going to happen based on the scenario. Repeatedly, had Gaddafi, sort of like a ceremonial emperor in Japan, been treated with respect, we nuked Japan because we refused to guarantee we would not harm their emperor. Fundamentally, that's what made them not unconditionally surrender, because of this. They wanted some guarantees about their emperor. We wouldn't give them, so we nuked them. So in a similar way, we had many opportunities. We could have sat down with the sides, the rebels, NATO, United Nations, African Union, Gaddafi, and have come up with a plan. And it would have been worth a try. It would have stopped the wholesale destruction of the entire Libyan armed forces with everyone inside it. All those guys in the tanks getting slammed by the missiles have wives and children and mothers. So what the horrible conspiracy of mediocrity would be knowing that they could have easily negotiated this thing. NATO instead chose to use it for target practice. Wanting to flatten the country similar to Iraq. Iraq was flattened so badly their infant mortality rate doubled, and it ended up killing 800,000 children based on an 8-year period of doubled infant mortality due to lack of potable water and the like. Here's an article, Libya's air show for defense firms. This that was an example of the cynical division of Libya up like the coat of many colors of Joseph by cannibalistic, rapacious capitalists. So that's what that Wall Street Journal article represents. So in my view, as this drags on, they should have known the disinformation campaign couldn't hold. And so what will end up happening, unless it's deliberate, is that should they assassinate Gaddafi, the blowback will be that somebody's already getting lionized. The longer he holds out, the more mistakes NATO makes. And the longer he holds out, the more mistakes NATO makes. The more he will be lionized like a modern-day Saladin. And then should he be assassinated as information is leaking out about the achievements of Libya under Gaddafi. Unfortunately, I must be a bit cynical. I don't know how much that will be the factor that exposes this hypocrisy and nation side, system side, the system of the Jamahiriya, the direct democracy, where they had village government, which is, if you listen to the part 1 and 2, you heard the lady saying, we ladies gather here to decide. In every village and every tribe, they had direct local autonomy, supposedly. And then the federal level was probably I still have to research the police state aspect of Libya. That's my next project, for anyone who cares to know. I can't believe we as a civilization have degenerated, that we openly discuss taking out heads of state we dislike, and with a country with climbing poverty, debt, incarceration, and declining educational competitiveness. Now, David Brooks was saying, America is still the only country you can come to and multiply your talents, and that's just utterly false. He's whistling Dixie. China is an excellent country of opportunity as well, if I'm not mistaken. And some people say Africa is a fool's paradise, my ex-Indian business partner. So the consequences of killing Gaddafi would be to lionize him eternally and to create an incredibly hostile group of people burning for revenge, just like the Ba'ath Party in Iraq. But it's not going to work out like it did in Iraq, because Gaddafi has a defensible story about development. He didn't wage war against his neighbors. He supplied rebels, but it's quite a different thing from gassing and electrifying marshes in an 8-year-long brutal struggle with Iran. He doesn't have the karma of a Saddam Hussein. And these families are going to turn against them, and in all of these cases where you have this arrogant behavior, well, like for example, the sinking of the entire navy of Libya in one night, just because they had perhaps had a launch near Misurata at one point. They just leveled the whole country's entire navy. Whoever takes over that government, they have to replace that navy. Who cares, right? The navy was virtually not used. There was no warning saying if you don't keep the fleet grounded. I mean, destroying the whole country's navy is going to outrage some people. What about a guy who used to work on one of those boats? You know, some old guy. He might not like it. And what happens in all these cases of this arrogant, destructive behavior, treating the rebels as kind of darkies in a way by not allowing them to coordinate to the level they would like to, and essentially acting as they're in a ass-kicking contest with Gaddafi, and the rebels are really secondary, which is not a good historical way for a country to achieve its independence, is having the crap bombed out of the old government by foreign raiders of a different religion. Think about it. The family's outraged. Sometimes they turn against a Gaddafi when one of their people dies, but usually they're going to be incensed by the idea of people under the cross coming to their land to kill their tyrannical, eccentric founding uncle. and the humiliation of proud people. They eventually will vend their nationalism. He's maybe a son of a bitch of Libya, but he's the son of a bitch of Libya. And now the population is thoroughly aroused. And Gaddafi is smart. He has notified the women about the reactionary tendencies and praised the women as the vanguard of his resistance. And if he's killed, there is going to be it's going to be similar to the Loyalist Underground in Iraq and in Vietnam, the case of Viet Cong. Now, maybe having this permanent instability like they have in Iraq is something that serves our new security state, because my contention is that our new constitution is a Patriot Act and our new government is a security state, because we have just allowed all the lower 40-60% of the country to decline, more incarceration, 29th out of 30 countries. Libya had much better health and welfare and education stats for their bottom 40% than we do. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. Okay, well, I think that the tide is turning in favor of the truth coming out, and hopefully these fellows getting hoisted on their own petard. Thank you.